Hello everyone. So before I get started, I'm going to use a facilitator technique that we don't teach you all. It's the art of distraction. In alignment with the title of my presentation today, Josephine has brought some marzipan chocolate all the way from Holland for you. So I'm just going to let you have some of that. Now all will be revealed about the title of this presentation as I move along. But it's been quite interesting listening to, over the last couple of days, we've had some great speakers talking about the corporate brain. So yesterday, of course, we had Andrew and Dave, and this morning, Jane and Malcolm, talking about the work that they do with the corporate brain and the real importance of setting that strong strategic vision and a really clear organisational purpose. The work we've been doing in Australia a lot lately has been with the next tier down about actually translating those strategies and that vision into action. And as Lucy has said, you know, the approach, it does evolve with the work that we do with our clients, and over the years, the things that we put into place, we learn from our clients as much as you learn from us, and that's a really important part of what we do and the joy that we get from our work. So the work we've been doing in Australia, Richard and I have been learning a lot, and we have been developing a lot as well. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. What have we got? So a little bit more about this layer of the organisation. So the role of senior management, talking about organisational improvement, is to contribute to and implement strategy, champion and lead projects, control and improve routine operation, and make sure that everyone in all the levels below is aligned and involved in all of the above. Generally easier said than done, especially if the corporate brain go off and develop the strategies and decide on the projects in isolation of that next tier down. So we've been thinking about how we can make that a bit more effective. So when we're talking about the next tier down, this is the layer of the organisation. So of course that's the corporate brain at the top there, and that green level there is that direct reports to the corporate brain. Our language is the next tier down. You might use terms like heads of service in your organisation. Excuse me. So why are we doing this session? So it's been a bit of a theme on both sides of the world that there's a little bit of frustration between the next tier down and the corporate brain. And what we're hearing is probably a bit of focus on the 15%, applying HR approaches and thinking about engagement and development and these sorts of things, but they're not actually having any effect, as you could probably imagine, in helping people in the organisation translate strategy into meaningful actions. So what we hear is a bit of language of frustration. So we hear this layer of the organisation called the Marzipan Layer, the frozen middle, or permafrost, which is not particularly flattering, is it? You probably would not be surprised to know that we also hear some language of frustration coming from that level of the organisation as well, when they're reflecting on the corporate brain. And typically, this layer of the organisation called the corporate brain, they. And usually it's they don't understand how busy we are. They don't understand my routine operation. They don't understand that these shiny projects mean nothing to me. They haven't explained the strategies. So it's really important that we make sure that we are helping eliminate this frustration and help make sure that people know what they're doing and why they're doing it. So this is where the rubber hits the road. So is this layer skidding out of control, or are they working really well together and actually sticking to the road and staying on course? So we are going to get you to do some thinking about this. And my lovely colleague Richard is going to hand out a remit for you to... Maybe if I take one, Richard, I'll start reading it out to people while you pass them out. Okay. So we're going to split you up into groups. Just hands up. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat all of a sudden. Hands up if you are part of the corporate brain. I think we've got a few. Okay, hands up if you are part of, I won't call you the Marzipan Layer, the next tier down. A few, and then everybody else. So we're going to have the corporate brain work over on a flip chart stand over here together. People who are part of the next tier down on a flip chart stand, and we might split everybody else up over on the other two flip chart stands, so 4 groups. The remit we're going to get you to work to is to have a think about these questions. So why is this level of the organisation important? The marzipan layer, the frozen middle. Have you heard any other terms, good or bad? Current UIMPROVE language is the next tier down. So part of our development is always to be thinking about, are we using the right language? Does it really reflect what we mean, what the intention here is? So can you think of anything better? What does the corporate brain, the executive team, want the next tier down to do? And what do the people who work for the next tier down want them to do? What challenges do the next tier down face? And what suggestions do you have for improving the way this group works? Okay, so we'll give you a few minutes. As usual, the practice is write the questions out in full, have a chat amongst yourselves and jot some ideas down up on the flip chart. There should be markers on each stand, but we'll have a quick look around and make sure that you've kitted up to get going. Okay, so those of you who work part of the corporate brain, we'll get you to work over. If you could please pick the flip chart stands with the wheels on it, because then we'll bring them to the front when you're done. So corporate brain members over here, next tier down members over in the back corner, and everybody else will split you up evenly across the other two flip chart stands. Away you go. Feedback for this is question by question. I'll read out the question. Sorry, I think I'm interfering with the microphones. And we'll run from Andy down through to the end, question by question. Keep it nice and snappy, no need for explanations, all right? Far away. All right, I'll give you the mic, hold it nice and close. So the first question is, why is this level of the organisation important?
Why is this level important? They have to be visible and approachable, help turn strategy into performance, leadership, connect corporate brain to the rest of the organisation, and trust, because the teams look up to them.
Let's pass it down.
In our group, we have two from the NHS and I'm from a housing organisation, and I think there was differences in the importance of this level or what we see it being for. I'm from an organisation, Manchester, you heard Dave Howe speak yesterday. We have 7 clear strategies, and the whole work of the organisation is to deliver those strategies. So the role of heads of service, which is what we're called, is to deliver that. So everything that we do, we link to those. I'm responsible for value, money and efficiency, so again, we link all that to delivering the strategies. Again, in the NHS, it's a bit different, so I'll hand over.
Yeah, I think because we're a much bigger organisation and it's quite fragmented, the commissioning arrangements, it's not as clear as those strategies where everyone's trying to find them as what they do. So it's a different climate we're working with.
Thank you. So sticking with that, just the one question and pass the mic down.
So our group said that level of organisation is important. It's there to translate the vision and direction to operations. It's to challenge the vision and provide insights into whether it works. Testing the vision, you need your sanity checks in there. They are the experts of delivering the service, and they're the advocates for the frontline staff in how you get your outputs in there.
Hi everybody, we thought that this level of the organisation is important because there needs to be the link between the executive teams, there needs to be the repository of expertise, as everybody else has said, to translate the strategy interactions, lead and champion projects, and basically run the business.
Excellent, thank you very much. Yeah, may as well pass it back. Yeah. I liked all those answers. Definitely a key role in translating that strategy into action and being those advocates for the frontline staff, because that's where strategy actually gets delivered, isn't it, on the front line. That's where you see it come to life. So if there's no one really representing that and understanding that work and how that relates to the strategy, then yeah, it's all just glossy pictures on the wall. Thanks, Mandy. Next question is the marzipan layer, frozen middle. Have you heard any other terms, good or bad?
You did say bad.
Yes, we did, yeah.
I know why you've nominated me now, guys. Right, so we, heard any other terms. Yes, we've heard shit sandwich, because you get it from both ends. And it's the wider management team, middle managers, and departmental heads.
Yeah, we couldn't come up with anything derogatory or that we know of anyway. We're heads of service in the NHS, tends to be heads of function and middle managers.
So we've heard terms such as gatekeeper, not necessarily a positive one, the blockers, bottleneck. Now I got censored on this one, but I'm talking, so it's going to go my way. That bastard who doesn't tell me anything. I'm sorry. And the mushrooms, going after mushroom management, they're the mushrooms.
We have middle managers, senior managers, heads of service, depending on what kind of industry you're in. Also, one of our guys, they're called associate directors. But for me personally, definitely is a layer of treacle where everything slows right down in that tier.
Interesting. Yeah. I think I've heard them all before. No doubt you've all heard them in one form or another as well. Okay, so question 3. Current UIMPROVE language is the next tier down. Do you have any better suggestions?
Well, we didn't like the next tier down, so we refer you back to question 2, with the exception of shit sandwich.
There's some debate around this. Suggestions were split the organisation round so that your leadership team, your executive team are actually at the bottom. We didn't quite, I think it's the word down that seems to give it some level of less importance than it actually has, and we couldn't come with an alternative, kind of like below. But again, have your frontline staff as the top and drive stuff down. And again, that suggestion was the top team.
Okay, so we looked at bands or tiers in the first instance. We then looked at drivers, and I don't think I've had enough coffee yet. We're looking at a rally car analogy, which is your top level, your navigators, your next layer down is the actual driver, and then your front line is the engine. Influencers, because let's face it, that tier is facing both ways. You've got to influence both up and down in that layer. And trailblazers, because at the end of the day, they're going to be looking at the vision and thinking of innovation in any other way to be able to deliver it.
So we started off with a conversation about, as the first 2 groups said, we don't particularly like the next tier down. How do the people then below them feel about being even further down at the bottom, or that kind of connotation and down being quite negative? So we started talking about strategic operators, which would work for some industries and not others. We talked about senior leaders and having a senior leadership team, again, which works for some industries and not others. So we actually kind of came full circle and thought, actually, we probably don't really like next tier down, but it does fit when you're talking about generalisation.
Great, thank you very much. Very interesting thoughts, thank you for that. Okay, so question 4. What does the corporate brains, the executive team, want the next tier down to do?
I know it was only 5 post-its, but like we said earlier, the corporate brain, we don't listen.
Fair enough.
We want the next tier down to deliver the departmental plans and support the company and the corporate brain to deliver the annual plans, to engage with their teams, have a reality check for the corporate brain, work together with their peers, be a visible leadership, not stuck in the sandwich, and have role model values.
Thank you.
Again, from our perspective, to lead and drive strategy and all the projects that sit underneath that, deliver targets. Some of us are lucky enough to be involved in actually setting targets, some not, into the NHS, set at a national level, manage budgets, and then some responsibility for staff development and staff management.
So from our perspective, so what does the corporate brain, the exec team, want the next tier to do? First off, get on with it. Simple as. Understand and translate their vision into how it's going to be done. Give assurance that the vision can be delivered. Quality check and report back on what's been asked for. And finally, project plan. Simple as that.
Yeah, we also talked about delivering the strategies and along the lines of just go and do it, basically just do all the work. We'll think of the ideas, you put them into practice. Lead and manage operations, be responsible, role model values, as you mentioned earlier. And we've got act as a filter, which we then argued against ourselves on the next slide.
Okay. Just do it. I love that. Just do it. Okay, so next question is, what do the people who work for the next tier down want them to do?
They want to have clear direction and clear communication and accept being challenged. They want to feel supported, listen and act, be transparent, and also be inspiring.
We didn't actually get time to answer anything other than question 4, but having thought about it, I think from our organisations, to keep it real, I think a lot of staff in the organisation want the heads of service team and the executive team to see things from their perspective, and also heads of service to sometimes, again, somebody said, challenge upwards, but again, it's around supporting the people who are actually doing the real work.
So we said what do the people who work for them want them to do, so what do we want them to do? First off, challenge what can't work. Don't simply pass down an unworkable plan, it simply can't be delivered. Provide the necessary support as it's needed. Communicate, and I speak very personally on that one. Biggest organisational problem that I have at the minute with my managers and my senior management team is they don't communicate effectively, so things aren't looking as they could be. Understanding the part that they play in this. Because again, that comes back to large responsibility. It's not good work. Facilitate and collaborate. Again, both directions, you work in both ways.
Yeah, we also talked about communication and the opportunity for inclusion for anything that's happening at that corporate brain level. And this is where we argued against ourselves as not being a filter, but a conduit, both bodies. We wanted them to carry out annual planning and have a clear strategy that we can all deliver and listen.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so if you've not answered any further questions, feel free to take a seat, get comfortable. Okay, so question 6. What challenges do the next tier down face?
The challenges are that they have multiple priorities. They'll feel pressure from all directions, feel undervalued, and feel under-resourced.
Very sad picture, isn't it?
So challenges we found were conflicting priorities from different parts of the corporate brain, challenges coming from below that tier, unclear direction, ambiguity, what's come down when the vision is foggy, basically, unachievable targets, and distance from the source, so you're too far removed either way.
Terrific, thank you. And question 7, what suggestions do you have for improving the way these people work? Winner, chicken dinner. It was not a competition.
Yeah. So, question 7. So, the suggestions we have is to keep them involved, inform them, not instruct them, empower them, give the autonomy to do the job. And it's okay to be creative and to take risks. Trust them, listen and learn, and make them feel valued.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for all those contributions. You probably are not surprised to know that these are the sorts of things that we hear very, very frequently. There are certainly no surprises at all. Thank you, John. Frustrations from both sides. Good intentions from all areas of the organisation, but then, you know, what's happening with this roadblock? Why are you the next tier down called the shit sandwich, or what's happening here? And what can we do about it to improve the way that these two layers of the organisation work together and interface? So we've come up with a bit of a list ourselves. So some of the challenges, a bit of a partial list here. So the corporate brain usually isn't very good at specifying and implementing what they want this level of management to do. So both how they work and how to behave. So just get on with it. We have literally heard senior leaders say, why don't they just get on with it? They've not actually been told how to get on with it, what's expected of them. And when we think about behaviour, you know, if the leadership team have clear expectations of behaviour, even if it's something as simple as using a notebook in all your meetings, those are the sorts of things that senior leaders need to communicate, that this is the expectation that we have of all the people who work for us. The next tier down often get done to by the current fad. So someone gets a bright idea and they swing from one thing to the next, and before you know it, everyone's off on training courses, learning how to use the latest fad. Currently we're seeing a lot of agile. So agile is all about doing, whereas the requirement is to be able to think and do. We have worked with quite a few groups who are very frustrated by the pace of our training and the pace that we work at. And Richard and I had a terrific module one with one group where they were clearly irritated by how slow things were going. We were covering all that theory, and Richard quite clearly said to them, well, I'm going very tempted to slow things down now because you need to learn to think. You need to stop being so busy and do. You need to think. So what we're seeing a lot with Agile is it seems to be generating a lot of busy work. I had a coffee with a former colleague once, and she told me that they were now using Agile in the new organisation she was working in. And it seems to be this competition of how many post-it notes you can put up on the wall. You know, together in the morning, you put your to-do list up on the wall so everyone can see what's happening. Sounds great in theory, but if you have a fairly routine job, important job, but it's not a list of post-it notes, you look like the person who's not contributing as much as everybody else. So she was saying everyone's putting up these loads of post-it notes so they look busy, and it's just creating this competition with all this fluffy work that's not aligned to anything important at all. So it is at this level where the tension between routine operation and projects is greatest. So we often hear that these shiny projects are being selected for one reason or another and pushed down without any real consideration of the impact that's going to have on the routine operation or the resources required to deliver these projects, which seem to have been pulled out of thin air. It's also good to keep in mind too that this is a level or a group and not a team. So they don't have common objectives. So we've got the senior leadership teams, the executive team, who have that common objective to implement the organisation's purpose. But your next tier down, they've got their own distinct teams with their distinct purposes. So when we're thinking about this, it's not a team that you can actually develop. There's no real work that you can get them to work on collectively because they don't have that common factor amongst them. And there is massive variability in the effectiveness of a leadership forum or equivalent meetings, if indeed such a gathering exists. And we've had a bit of an evolution in leadership forums, which I'll cover off in a little bit in a moment. But we're seeing a bit of variation in how they're used. So everything from really, really effective opportunities to have people participate in the development of strategies, through to a bit of a box-ticky feel-good kind of exercise. We've got everybody in the room, we've got them a chance to say how they feel, and we've ticked that box and moved on. So we've got some thoughts on how to improve that. So a bit of an evolution in how we have worked with this tier of the organisation. So 27 years ago, before I was born, sticking with the jokes everyone's been throwing out there, universal improvement skills for everybody. It was a one-size-fits-all product that it is still a very good product, of course, that teaches everybody the fundamental skills for improvement. But more recently, the thinking that goes into the universal improvement skills it's evolved, it's expanded. So we've got the strategic improvement program specifically for the corporate brain. So that helps bring together great individual leaders and develops them as a cohesive team. Then we've got the universal improvement skills still, universal data skills and control your processes. So that had been used in organisations, a little bit of everything as they've gone along and had the budget to do it. We've kind of pulled all of that together now to develop this new program that we're now rolling out, the Organisational Improvement Program, and it is specifically for that next tier down of the organisation. So it brings together all those elements into one program. So these are our first two groups that we've worked with. TransLink is my old stomping ground, that's where I came from. I joined TransLink in 2012 and was told I should become a facilitator, and I said no. And then I was given another chance, I said no, not a chance. And then I was made to, inherited the job of the facilitator coordinator. So I thought I'd better do this training so I know what I'm actually doing, but I'm never ever going to facilitate anything. So here I am a few years later, it didn't work out how I thought it would. So TransLink were the first client to use to use this product or to start this product. They've piloted it, really enjoying it. And then North Queensland Airports had their first module just a few weeks ago. And interestingly, their senior leadership team have not done any training with us at all. So this was all really new to them. So TransLink been a client for many, many years. North Queensland Airports, very new to it, and absolutely loved it, just completely embraced this whole new way of thinking. And the boss had asked us what could he expect them to do differently afterwards. And our answer was the very first thing you should expect them to see from them is that they'll be thinking differently. Most important part of it. Then there's, of course, so that's the training, then there's facilitation. So in 1997, looks like Richard has dug out a copy of the proposal that was prepared for Dave Power back in the day. So a management forum for the top 3 tiers, and that has evolved into what we now call the leadership forum. And what we're now recommending with the leadership forum is, rather than running them as events in isolation, is to link it in with the annual corporate planning process. So if this is not familiar to you, I did double check the manual earlier. Page 6.4 in the manual has the model annual corporate planning process. So it starts out with the tier of taking in your strategic intelligence and cascading that down through your strategic planning, executive events, annual planning. So we think that linking in your leadership forums to your strategy development events, so run a 1 or 2 day strategy development event, then a leadership forum straight on the back of that, so that next tier down have got real-time opportunity to contribute to the draft strategies that have been developed. So the actual work in progress that executive team have been working on, having that opportunity for the next tier down to contribute to the hows really brings that bottom up into the top down development of those strategies. And then running them throughout the year to brief in what has gone on at executive events. Malcolm mentioned this morning that there's some discipline to make sure that you haven't had these great couple of days away together at an exec event and then you get caught up in those emails and things. So having a leadership forum gives that opportunity to brief in what's gone on, and it changes the outputs from those exec events from good intentions to actual practical actions, and helps with that communication that some of you spoke about, that you don't know what's going on and how do those messages get filtered down. So what we have already done, excuse me, we've developed and improved the Organisational Improvement Program, and it is still a work in progress. We are constantly learning from our clients, and this tier of the organisation challenge us in a really, really good way. TransLink particularly, having used UIMPROVE for so many years, one of the first things somebody said to us is, not seeing great results here, it's either the approach or what we're doing with it. So that was really good for us to hear, and so we took that on board completely, and they could see themselves that having not immersed this level of the organisation into UIMPROVE, they had loads of facilitators, they did executive events, but actually this level of the organisation, who are really responsible for translating that strategy into action, didn't have the tools and techniques to actually do it. So hopefully we have closed that gap for them now. So we've improved how we facilitate the leadership forums, the new and improved sessions, and as I said, filtering it into that standard annual pattern. And importantly, improved and expanded content on how to facilitate leadership forum as part of the Advanced Facilitator Development Program, so your own facilitators can be trained in this. And this is an important one because we also see a lot of fantastic, very enthusiastic facilitators get drawn in to facilitate some sort of quasi-leadership forum, and they do their best. They do a good job, they do their best, but they're not actually trained in, with the right tools and techniques or understanding how to run an effective leadership forum. They're also there facilitating the entire management population of their organisation, which can be very intimidating for some facilitators. So obviously the UIC are available to facilitate this, but we like to make sure that you've got the skills and resources in your organisation to be self-sustainable and to be able to do it really effectively internally. So we have enhanced that element of the Advanced Facilitator Development Program to really upskill your great facilitators so that they can support you in this way. So what's next? We will be producing a yearbook article covering this topic, and there will be a new section in the Complete Guide to Leadership, both hopefully due, this is very brave of Richard to call out a date I think, but we're going to say both due in January 2020, routine operation permitting. That's me I think. Finn, done. All right, thank you very much everybody.